Excellent. Well, thank you all for joining us for another sustainability lunch series. We are very excited for today's session. But before we dive in, I have just a few quick announcements from the Sustainability Initiative team. So I wanted to share a few upcoming lunch series that we're hosting. Next week, I'm giving a presentation with the Career Development Office all about sustainability careers. So if you're in an internship search right now and a full-time search, definitely join our program. We're going to share with you resources, stories, strategies in terms of navigating a career path in sustainability. So QR code's up on the screen, or you can find it on Sloan Groups. The week after that, we're hosting our annual spring showcase event. So this is a chance for you to hear directly from faculty who are teaching sustainability courses in the spring semester ahead of bidding. This is a phenomenal program. If you're thinking about the certificate, if you're not thinking about the certificate, we usually have about 15 faculty join us. And it's a great opportunity to just hear a quick pitch about their courses. So that's happening on November 20th, again, up on Sloan Groups. And lastly, I just want to shout out that tickets are going to go on sale for the Climate Cap MBA Summit for Sloan students on Monday, December 8th. We're going to be hosting the ticket sales for Sloanies on Sloan Groups. So just make sure that you are tapping into our communications network so you don't miss out on this chance to purchase a ticket and join us for this conference. So without further ado, I want to introduce today's guest speaker as well as our student facilitator. Today's session is especially unique. So you're going to be seeing a real live trial of a TEDx talk. So Noah is a featured speaker at TEDx Boston, which is happening next weekend here at MIT. Highly recommend checking it out. And today, lucky for all of us, we get to see a sneak preview of that talk. Noah's talk will then be followed by a fireside chat by one of our own MIT Sloan students, Audrey Thang. And before I introduce Noah, I'd love to share a little bit more about Audrey. Audrey is a second-year MBA student at MIT Sloan and a former art finance professional at Sotheby's Auctions. Her background spans valuation, portfolio management, and asset-backed lending across art, law, and finance. She is passionate about sustainable development and the future of wealth that connects culture, capital, and impact. Thank you so much, Audrey, for your willingness to facilitate today's chat. Now, let's introduce today's guest speaker, Noah Wilson-Rich. Noah Wilson-Rich, PhD, is a pioneering evolutionary biologist, author, and public speaker at the forefront of pollinator and biodiversity science. He is the founder of the Biodiversity Lab, a new venture dedicated to advancing global biodiversity and consulting on innovative ecological solutions. He is also the founder and active leader of Urban Bee Lab, a nonprofit using bees and biodiversity science to help communities, companies, and cities take meaningful action for nature. In addition, he is the founder of the Best Bees Company, a mission-driven business that revolutionized urban beekeeping. Noah's work has been featured in the Wall Street Journal, the Boston Globe, Science Magazine, TED, NASA's blog, and more. He has delivered multiple TEDx talks with millions of views and published extensively on pollinator health. His pioneering efforts, including smart hives and honey DNA technology, are shaping new possibilities for understanding and protecting biodiversity. Noah's unique ability to bridge rigorous science and accessible public communication makes him a trusted authority and an inspiring voice on the future of our food systems and environment. Please join me in welcoming Noah.
Hello.
Thank you, Noah. That was incredible. And it's so wonderful to see such a great turnout in the audience today in the room, as well as online. I think it really beautiful tied in the conversation around how the decline in global pollinators, not just a cause, like a decline in our well-being, but it's actually symptomatic of what is happening to our habitat. So I know it's very beautifully tied in. Again.
And can I check, can everybody hear Audrey? Do you have your mic turned on? I had to turn it.
I believe so.
Oh, you're good?
Is that better? Maybe I need to shift this a little bit upward. Okay, again, my name is Audrey. I'm especially excited to be moderating this conversation because I think I think, Noah, you have one of those rare stories that beautifully connects business, science, and community impact. And I think the research and your work that you're doing really helps organizations translate sustainability practice into real measurable ways. So let's dive in. For the next 20 minutes or so, I'm going to ask a few questions to kick off the conversation,
Sure.
and then we'll leave some time at the end for questions from the audience.
Thank you.
Great. Noah, you're a serial entrepreneur, and you founded the Best Bees company from what started as a backyard beekeeping project. It turned into a nationwide network powering research for NASA, MIT, Harvard, and beyond. Let's take us back into those early days. What sparked the idea? And what did those first few years of growing an urban science-based business look like for you?
Well, thank you for the question. So, I started a company when I was a student. I was down the street at Tufts. And Jesse here, and I had to put you on the spot, just connected. Jesse graduated from the same lab that I did, but last year, and I think is in a similar boat. We're like, okay, we have these PhDs in bees, like kind of bright-eyed, bushy-tail, we're going to change the world. And now, okay, the economy, right? We have to think about not just getting a job and making an impact, but also how do we increase value, not just for the planet, but for others. And yeah, make money too. These things all go hand in hand. And so when I was in grad school, it was during the Great Recession of 2008. I grew up poor. My mother likes when I say we didn't have resources. She said this to you too. She's like, we weren't poor. We didn't have much. Okay, so we didn't have a lot of resources. When I was a single school teacher in New York City, a couple kids, single mom, praise out to single moms out there and kids who were raised by them. So all I knew was kind of hustling. And when the economy tanked already, I wasn't able to get a grant for my research at this lab. And so I never approached life from one of abundance. And years of therapy, and this worked its way into my talk, has shown me the value of moving your mindset from one of limitation to one of abundance. And I made business errors along the way. For example, in picking who to work with, thinking, oh, these are the only people I'm ever going to know. And I have a business need, and I don't know about this business thing, so let me just go with you because you're here in front of me. Instead of thinking, no, it's a big world out there. And just because I don't have a lot of resources right now doesn't mean I can't go find them. So just by being here and meeting each of you at Sloan, like, oh my gosh, do you guys want to work together? Like, let's talk because we have abundance here. So I started the business while I was bartending. I was down the street at a place called Lingo at the EF Education Building across from the Museum of Science. And it was $10 an hour, which at the time was a lot for bartending. I think it still is. And I could just do my schoolwork. But it was at a business school. And I overheard those conversations at Halt. And they said there was the MIT $100,000 entrepreneurship contest down the street. You had to just do a pitch, 60 seconds. I was like, put me in, coach. I'm going to do it. I applied online at the bar and I got in and I won the life sciences division. I didn't win the 100,000. I won 2,000. I was like, oh my God, I have $2,000. What can I do with this? So I started a Facebook page and I put some materials together. I printed out cards and I just said, I'm selling beehives and I'll volunteer my time to manage them in exchange for research funding. You keep the honey, I'll keep the data. Does anybody want some bees? And slowly it built up. I was teaching classes at the time. I was, bartending and then also making some money from this company slowly but surely. 15 years later, it's a multi-million-dollar corporation. We're in 24 cities. I just had a CEO succession plan successfully. So I'm no longer the CEO, which is great. Delaney Dameron, shout out to you. And yeah, we've done amazing things. And I would say it's all because I opened the emails. I responded to the LinkedIn messages. I would answer the call. I would stay open to whatever might be there because who am I? I was the bartender that won the contest. So who's anybody else who reaches out? And through those opportunities, I had the first TEDx Boston talk. That was in 2012. That led to a book deal. Princeton wrote me an email, Princeton University Press. Do you want to write a book about bees? I was like, no, I don't know how to do that. I don't have time. Who has time to write a book? If any of you were like, do you want to write a book right now? Like, I don't know, raise your hand. Would you write it? Oh my God, not even
That
one?
proves your point.
Not a single Well, listen, I would just push back to like find the time. I don't know, you make it work. It was really hard, but that was 2013, came out in 2014. The publisher put me on a national speaking tour, and I was like, yes. I said yes to any time I could talk, and that's how I met employees and scaled the business without any money. And so that led to my phone ringing from MIT, 2015. Great students, and they said, hey, we're going to put bees into space. Like, how do we do that? I was like, oh, no, don't do that. But that's how these opportunities came, mostly inbound from giving talks like this and just putting my science, my knowledge out there. So for each of you, if any of you are thinking about how to start a business as a student, consulting is very available to you. You know a lot about something. And when people ask you about what you know, if you charge them $1 for your answer, you're in business. It's just how I talk to, kids, but it's the same thing for students anywhere. It doesn't take money to start it. And the more you put yourself out there, the more you build your brand, and you just try to say yes until you reach that point of a boundary where you don't want to burn out, but you will. And that's how I did it. Yeah.
I'm sure hearing all of this is very inspiring for those, many of us in this room who are at the start of our careers, people who are interested in going into entrepreneurship and people who are interested in science. So that kind of leads to my next question. Building a mission-driven company that is both financially sustainable as well as being scientifically rigorous is not easy. Can you chat more about your role? How do you balance yourself as both a scientist and the realities of running a business?
Yeah, I think it's really helpful to approach a business without money because it forces you to think, what am I going to spend money on? I ended up funding my business through credit cards, personal credit cards. I had up to 9 maxed out at any time. The interest rate was 32%, 33% on the highest one. It was crazy. I mean, insane. But I did these as intentional decisions. I thought, well, it's better, in my opinion at the time, maybe even now, to have credit card debt and a company instead of no debt and no company. It's finance. That's all it is, whether it's credit cards, personal loans, private equity, VC investors, whatever it is, it's all finance. And you're making decisions, you're making bets on yourself. You wouldn't do this venture if you didn't believe in it or find it curious enough to pursue. So when you don't have much, there was nothing, I like to stay insolvent. This is like turn the cameras off. But as a founder, when you take risks, if I don't have anything in my name, then I still have nothing to risk. And it's not to say my family doesn't have assets or others, but you can do creative financial planning moves so that you continue to treat each dollar like it's your first. And that makes you think about it very seriously. And the things you can do for free, try to do them while taking care of your health, because that's how you get marketing and branding. And in terms of branding with sustainability, with values, your values are what you see the future as. You want to work towards those. It can be really difficult to run a business like in sustainability when you're not able to afford the expensive things that go along with being sustainable yourself. When we looked at doing sustainability reports for our clients, we said, we're not going to do that because we need to factor in our own carbon emissions, for example, our vans. So we are always constantly at the Best Bees Company checking ourselves and thinking, well, what's our environmental impact? We can't just say that of our clients and their data. We always want to factor ours in too. So we live our values and we live our mission alongside our clients. And we're always checking on that too.
Yeah, definitely. And I think you touched on the consulting and the design a little bit in your presentation as well. Tell us more about the Biodiversity Lab that takes your research further into this consulting and design space for organizations. What drove that pivot? How do you see biodiversity data shaping how companies can make better decisions for the future?
Yeah, thanks, Audrey. So with the Biodiversity Lab, I just started this company a month or two ago. And it's because I started to feel internally, maybe some of you can relate when you're doing something, let's say a program here at Salon. Again, cut the cameras, close the doors. And you just start to feel like, okay, what I was interested in 2 years ago, maybe I'm no longer interested in that. Maybe I've grown. We all want to grow. Hopefully we grow together in the same direction at the same pace, but oftentimes we don't. Maybe you've been in a personal relationship like that before too. And you're like, I don't know if we're growing in the same direction at the same pace. Right? You check in with that. And I think it's so important because that's what I went through. With the Best Bees Company, I started it to advance my research. The research took a different direction around 2018. As I just shared, data started to come out showing there were negative impacts of honeybees. My mission was never about honeybees. It was about all pollinators. And so I wanted to pivot my company to do global biodiversity. Let's move past honeybees. I would say, what does our beekeeping company look like without honeybees? It's just like one of these founder CEO annoying questions to all the staff. We're like, okay, here's Noah, like talking about let's cancel our main product. But I felt like we needed to do that by looking at what the data were telling us. We had to respond to the market and live our values. And I realized this company is bigger than me. I created an industry, a global industry with different players in the market in different countries. Some of them have raised over $150 million each in investment funding. Like, this is getting away from me. And so in order for me to check back in with my growth and my values where they are now, I said I need to start a different venture. So this is my 5th venture now. The other ones are still going. And this time I am pausing and I'm listening to where the world is at, where the data are, where the buyers are. So for any of you who are thinking about starting a company, one thing I did wrong before, 2 things. I didn't hire a finance person as my first person. I think I hired them like last. And I didn't start with marketing. I didn't really understand marketing. And I want to encourage each of you when you're thinking about what to do, let's just say it's consulting, don't just think about who I want to work with, but think who has the money. Even if you want to work with somebody that doesn't have money, Jesse and I were just talking about working with nonprofits in North Carolina. Amazing, great. Don't just work with them. Think who funds them? Who are their main donors? And you go to their donors and you say, hey, you've done some great work here. I think I can take it a little bit farther. Would you be interested in supporting that? So you don't have to skip over the finance. You don't have to not work with your target market. It's just lessons that we learn the hard way. So hopefully for each of you, when you do want to pivot, you don't have to just start a new company. You'll be able to take your company with you in different ways, but living your values and staying on a growth trajectory sometimes require you to have to do different things. And so for us as a consulting firm now, we're able to listen, we're able to work globally to bring some PhDs and other very smart people together and think about data centers, big tech, sports. For us, it's real estate developers. Who has the money to make an impact? And now to listen to them. And then when we're doing contracting, how do we lift up small companies around the world? So if we say from Boston to Bangalore, somebody wants a green roof anywhere in India, how do we say yes and find local installers and maintenance companies there to do it instead of flying people in and training them with the technology to add value to what they're doing? So we connect the client and the vendor together to lift them up and more rapidly speed up the pace of adoption of technologies. So that's what the Biodiversity Lab is all about. That was the history why we did it and what we're looking to do. And we're still building the team. So if you are interested, please come talk to me. I always want to evaluate what works for us and also just help you guys out. I love learning more about what you're up to.
There you go. Some very practical advice and maybe some career potential as well. I love that all the projects that you're working on, you have such a prolific volume of the different directions that you want to take. And I think this might be one of my favorite questions. I want to go back a little bit and talk about the Bees in Space project.
Yes.
Please tell us more what entails, what the project is involved, sending bees into microgravity.
Yeah.
What are the challenges and surprises you encounter along the way?
It's so MIT. Have any of you been offered space to do a project on a rocket ship? I thought you were going to say that. I'm honestly shocked because I can't ask that question anywhere else than here. But this is stuff that happens at MIT. And so you have these opportunities. And when you try to say yes and you go for it, you approach life from one of abundance. Why not? Why not me? Let's go for it. That was something where with Blue Origin, so this is Jeff Bezos' his rocket company, of all the billionaires with the rockets, they were just putting them up and landing them. And so with Blue Origins, they have an empty capsule and they said, we have space. And they put it up to students to do experiments on. Anybody want to do a project? And so a group of MIT students said, yeah, let's throw some bees up there. And they were awarded the project. And then they called me and they were like, let's do it. We don't really know why we're doing it, but it sounds cool. That's why I was like, what? And so at TEDx Boston next weekend at the Kresge Auditorium, we'll have a little table there with the space bees that are dead now. But they did survive the ride to suborbital space. It took 3 minutes from Texas. They hung out for 3 minutes, and then it took them 3 more minutes to land. And when they did land, the capsule popped off from the reusable rocket, and then with a parachute floated over the Texas grasslands, and our students had to chase like hundreds of square miles of terrain to go find the capsules. And all of our bees survived. We took videos. We looked at how this social system responds to a new type of stressor. So if like school doesn't stress you guys out enough, it's like, oh, why don't we put you in a chamber and shoot you into space and then see how you respond to stress? So we were able to understand how social systems evolve and in different capacities, but also if we are to have life beyond Earth and food and pollination systems. We probably don't want a human person pollinating crops by hand. Maybe those people in space or other planets will need to do more important tasks. So how do we have animals that can help be part of our agricultural system? I know it's a silly topic. People are like, well, why don't we fix Earth's problems first? Yeah, totally valid question. But we threw them up, brought it back down. We reared those space queens on the rooftop at the MIT Media Lab. Such an MIT thing. Let's go visit the Space Queens. And that rocket capsule has been on display at the Museum of Modern Art ever since.
That is so cool.
Yeah, and we applied for a patent for it, and the office was like, "You're good. Like, no, you don't need a patent. Nobody needs this design."
I love that so much. And I can't wait to hear like what's next after with the collaboration with NASA.
Yeah, that was crazy. So that's also with Neri Oxman's lab, so mediated matter, and Oxman as a lab is now in New York City. And NASA was actually a totally separate project. So that had nothing to do with NASA. That was with a program called Develop. And so if any of you are interested in data analytics or doing some work as an intern through NASA with a company, check them out. So the Develop is a 3-time-a-year project through NASA. It's all around the country, and you get assigned a 10-week program with a data set. So we provided bee health data. We had a student from Michigan State, and they helped to analyze it and then come up with a predictive algorithm for environmental factors that will improve bee health. But each of you could have a different sort of match with a different company and guidance from NASA for data analytics. So it's a great program that you guys should all know about.
Thank you, Noah. I think we have some time for one last question from me. Just to close us out, as you know, many of our audience in this room are at the start of our careers. If there's one piece of advice that you could give to the people in this room, what would it be?
Ooh, I'm going to look at Rekha because we talk about this all the time. She's so mad at me. By the way, shout out to Rekha here, Rekha Sidhu, who runs her own PR firm and has also started it multiple times and is really focused, called Corner Shop Communications. So focusing on individual, community-based, people of color, women, how do we lift everybody up through PR, branding, marketing? When I think about starting a business, and we're such good friends. And anytime one of my friends is dating, I always said, you want the other person to know you have options. It's not, you don't have to play games, but let them know like you got options. And I think when you're starting a career, that mindset is also really important because you can find that job, that one interview, that one application that you are all in on, and that's great. Enthusiasm goes a very long way. That's another topic for a different keynote talk that I give. But when you maintain a mindset that you have options, it helps get you through. You know this, whatever's stressing you out, it will end. You will do something next. And so when you start a business, you want to just go for it. You want to watch the money. Don't keep, it's a different ballgame if you're putting a lot of money towards a new idea. But if you are keeping an eye on that, then just know, look, if this doesn't work out, fine, we're going to do the next thing. It's also called embracing a culture of failure. As scientists, we have a lot of training in failure because most experiments don't work and most hypotheses are not supported. And when you're in grad school for science, that means you have to stay for extra years. It is really difficult. But when you can embrace a culture of failure, always know your worth, whether you're in business or dating, not to give you love advice, but there's a lot of cool love things we can learn from bees as well. You'll maintain your worth and your value, and you'll keep your head high no matter what.
Beautiful, beautiful. That's an advice that can apply in all areas of life.
Yeah, say it sassy to yourself in a bad situation as you walk out. I got options. And if they hear you, so be it.
Exactly. And we'll now open the floor for questions from the audience.
I wanted to ask, first of all, thank you very much for coming. And I want to ask what sort of thoughts about artificial pollination?
Yeah, it's crazy. So China, we'll take a field trip for the answer.
I was thinking about Israel, but yeah.
Israel, yeah. Let's.
Okay.
Can we do China and then Israel?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I'll do really quick. So China, artificial pollination. One thing my mind goes to was hand pollination. China had a big problem using agricultural chemicals and then wiping out pollinators. They became quite sterile grounds, and people were hired to do hand pollination. As the cost of labor has increased in China, so I would call it artificial pollination with hand pollination. So as the living wages have increased, that's shifted the economics. That's shifted it back in China to say, maybe we can't afford to hire these human bees, and maybe we now actually need to invest in our ecology to go back. So that's been an interesting shift. In terms of Israeli technology with bees, that is like the top of the world right now. Norway is like number 2, I would say. Norway collaborating with Germany, where they are not just using AI, but they're also using robotics They're doing amazing things. Beehives is one company out of Israel that's raised over $170 million so far. They were just on CNBC. And it's really like their bees don't die. Their beehives can cure disease. They have robotic arms that lift up the frames of honeycomb and they can just diagnose disease right there. So it's a really amazing innovation that I see it as not replacing people, but helping people use our brains a little bit more. There's also been a cool project from Harvard and MIT with robo-bees. So that's my third part of the three-part answer then. And I think that's at the MIT Museum. Do you know about the robo-bees? Yeah.
Well, I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, it's also an episode of Dark Mirror. Did anybody watch that show? When I would teach, I knew it. It was like season 6, episode 3 or something. So like all the bees are dead, but then some politicians or somebody like gets a hold of them. And did you see that?
No, I didn't see that, but
Well-
that sounds very Dark Mirror material
So
worthy.
good. Yeah, it's a great episode. Not as good as the Miley Cyrus episode, but it's good.
Okay. We'll have to look into that.
Yeah, thank you. We've heard space, with Miley Cyrus. We got options.
I can ask a question while the group is still thinking. One thing I really love about your research is the honey DNA. From your research, you've discovered that bees actually have this very diverse appetite for different plants. Can you tell us more about how, what are some of the surprising facts that you've uncovered between bee health and some of the data that you found?
Yeah, I think that each of you at MIT have such amazing insight because of your access to technology, because you have these events that you can just go to. You start to see what the inevitable future will look like in a way that you here at Sloan an incredible advantage that others don't.
At the studio, right?
And so
She was not late.
this remember when I was a kid and my sister and I used to share.
I went up there just to last night. I'm like, yo, something like, go up there. Let me just check. Let me just check in on that.
So one of the technologies that I debuted at the MIT Media Lab was with honey DNA. I had a colleague who was like, hey, we can start looking at DNA forensics anywhere. There's actually a lot of work with spider webs and house bunnies. You can see all the wildlife that lives everywhere that you just don't know about. And so I debuted the world's first edible genome at the MIT Media Lab at an event. We looked at the plant DNA in honey. I stood next to a coffee and tea station and I was like, taste the genome. And everybody's like, you are so weird. Nobody tasted it. Nobody came near me. And I was like, this business idea that I thought was so cool, the inevitable future, like nobody's going near me. And I'm at MIT, so if anybody's going to get it, it should be them. And that's just embracing the culture of failure. And so thinking, okay, I think it's cool. This has value. The information in samples of honey where we see what plants we're tasting, the terroir of the land, allows for new industries, sommeliers, like wine, but now guided through science with like the American Honey Tasting Society, which is a thing. You can do trainings. And I also thought about how we can work with governments, like I shared here too, in different parts of the world to start working with people in rural areas. We did cool research with honey DNA, looking at natural disasters before and after Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico to see which plants bounce back soonest, California wildfires to see what bounced back sooner, so we can inform the public about what to plant more of in advance to increase our resilience against climate change. So there was a lot that we could do, and the way that we eventually went to market was successfully was by looking at Ancestry DNA and 23andMe, other genomics type companies that were successful where you spit in a tube and you send it in and it's like, I'm from Germany or whatever. But this was like, this honey is from roses. And that started to work. One thing, turn off the camera, is that with my company, it started to get very expensive and kind of mission drift in a way that I'd like to see these technologies get more and more affordable. And I think a lot of business owners have a conundrum there. As you're developing new technologies, bring them to market, you'll probably start to see that they're getting more and more affordable, but you have a constraint with your business demands where you have to make more and more profit. And then that gets in the way of speeding up the deployment and whatever mission you're trying to work on. We did do a spin-off nonprofit about 10 years ago. That's the Urban Bee Lab. So there's different ways where you can keep your mission going and your growth going, but in different entity formations that I'm happy to work with any of you guys on. I've started, I got an LLC, we did an S Corp, we did a C Corp, we did a nonprofit, all these things. And some of them are helpful for different parts of your life and to help you achieve what you want to do. Even one of our vendors with environmental DNA said, when we said, can you do this for plants and tell us what animals are there? They said, nope, and no other lab in the world can do it, and you have to work with us. And when he said no to me, I was like, I'm going to find other labs in the world. And I found 15 other labs that did this. So even for your ideas, if any of you are thinking about technology and management and entrepreneurship, and you have a supply chain limitation and you don't know where else it is, think to yourself, you have options. You are approaching this conundrum from a point of limitation. They are out there and it's like dating. They're looking for you right now. And I did find 15 other labs that do this. And so now I have 15 different supplies that I can go to at different price points with different customs. Our Germany lab held a sample of honey at customs for 4 months and then sent it back. And I was like, you guys are so great, but I just can't work with you. But maybe if we have a client in Germany, then it could work. And so there's a lot of benefits to diversification of your vendor needs in this crazy world.
Your graph comparing the plant makeup of successful versus not successful bees was really interesting. I'm wondering how do you apply some of that thinking to developing countries where when they're trying to balance kind of basic needs, but also have this potential industry that they're working in and may be subject to some of the environmental factors associated with industrialization and kind of lifting themselves out of more challenges.
Oh my gosh, I love this question so much because it's a grand challenge in the modern world. The rich are getting richer, whether it's people, companies, or countries or organizations. The poor are getting poorer and just being completely left behind. And yet, there are so many natural resources that are either being overexploited or underexploited in ways that now some great organizations, one is called Sugi, S-U-G-I, look them up. Beautiful Instagram page. I got married last year, and that was one of the charities that we had people donate to. They are doing amazing work around the world, empowering indigenous communities to look at cover crops, to look at edge rows, to look at agriculture. For example, the palm industry, is very detrimental in many parts of the world, just overexploiting the land. There are ways that you can have cover crops there that are diverse native wildflowers that retain more water. They hold more soil structure. They keep the soil healthy. Some of them can even take out toxins from the soil. And then you have your native pollinator communities back. And through these sensors that are very affordable now, there's one group we're working with out of Sri Lanka. They're like, oh yeah, we can do that sensor for $3. Like, oh, you can? Like, great, do it. Why are you not doing it? Let's speed this up. And so in doing so, when you look at the large players, this is where I'm coming from with the Biodiversity Lab, who are the companies that are doing the worst? And let's go knock on their door. Be like, hey, can we help? Who owns the most land? Who are the palm growers? And saying, hey, can we get in here? Can we just add some cover crops? It's going to lower your water bill. You're going to have to invest less in the soil. You have to use, less fertilizer. So we have to make the economic case. But oftentimes they just haven't thought about that because they are very status quo. In doing so, other industries then start to spurn up. For example, more wildflowers, more honey production, especially if honeybees are already indigenous to that area too. So you have a balance in that community. You can add science to that product. Maybe some of the edge rows can grow cut flowers. So there's a lot more economic opportunity for the future, for our values that we see it, than exists right now from this point of limitation and powerlessness. And we think the land is just being overexploited, but the mining industry is actually a big driver for the eDNA industry. There's a great company in Canada called Nature Metrics. Y'all should look into Nature Metrics. They work primarily with mining, doing eDNA work, and they're hiring a lot. Their CEO, Dimple Patel, has been doing a lot of fundraising. So there's a lot happening in this space. And I want to encourage each of you to focus on what do you see as the biggest problem? What is offending you the most? Channel that rage into a business plan or a one pager, or talk to PR like Rekha back here, or somebody that can help be like, okay, you're a little crazy right now. Let's take a breath. I'm going to help you polish up this one pager and then facilitate an introduction. And they can say no, which is fine, but at least you tried. And if they say yes, I just got advice from a consultant a couple of weeks ago, and they said, hey, we want a proposal from you. I said, I'm not sure how much to charge. And she said, people just go in for $10,000 a month. That's just the standard rate. And in return, they'll offer you equity on top of that. I was like, cool. That sounds great, because as a consultant too, you can then get multiple contracts in the same industry. So there's a lot of good and potential that can happen. And that's where each of you come in today here at Sloan, because you are that next generation. And if y'all don't do that here when you're exposed to technology, somebody's going to do that in Michigan. I love Michigan, not dumping on them, but I'm saying you guys here have the advantage, and I'm proud of you for that. You've worked so hard for that, and that's up to you to use that. Sorry, Michigan. I'm not just kidding.
We have a question online. CT says, "Hi Noah, thanks for sharing your experience. Tell us more about what your work with nonprofits look like, since you mentioned working with groups in North Carolina."
Awesome. CT is great. So CT and I met, I know that name, at the Green Sports Alliance meeting in Miami earlier this year. Even Green Sports Alliance, I was like, wow, that's so cool. Let me get in there. Sports, it's global language that helps scale. They have money. They'll spend like $100,000 on outfits for a photo shoot. You're like, cool, you have budget to pay me as a consultant or anybody. And they're doing great things that just haven't been scaled to other ballparks yet. So in North Carolina with nonprofits, I know CT is doing really amazing work with her company, repurposing waste from sport and event venues. And then making fashion with them and selling them back at the retail store, which is pretty cool. And working with local communities, I actually suggested to CT to go to the Possible Project. Has anybody heard of TPP, the Possible Project in Cambridge? Oh my God. So right here, y'all need to know about it. Makerspace, high school kids, entrepreneurship pathway, giving them skills, mentorship, and how they start their own business. If high schoolers are starting their own business, nothing is stopping you guys from trying it out now too. So for nonprofits, I'd love to volunteer with those groups. Another great one for you to know about is the Global Good Fund. It's a social impact entrepreneurship fellowship that gives you money, often $10,000, leadership development coaching, and executive mentorship. And you can either be a fellow, apply to be a fellow, or you can be a coach or mentor depending on your skill set there. So with them, we've published papers, and the next challenge is figuring out who's sponsoring these and how do we work more with the sponsors to scale down. Whereas all of the work that so many people do with nonprofits is you start at the bottom level in the community, and then you think, man, we're burned out. We don't have enough resources. This is so hard. Let's partner with other nonprofits who share what we're going through, but it's very hard to make traction there. So this new approach, going to sponsors, we learned at this conference yesterday at Gillette Stadium that the ownership of the Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta with the Blank Family Foundation, they have $6 billion that Mr. Blank has said he's going to spend down in his lifetime. He's going to only pass on 10% to his family. I hope he'll be okay. That's billions of dollars that they have said they are going to gift to communities. We only learn about that because we're showing up and we're just listening to how other nonprofits have funded themselves. So we need to start with the funding and think, what are you funding into? Who are you funding? And how do we work together with them to drive impact? So we can still do the same great work with a nonprofit. It's just, I think today, as the economics are always changing, we always have to update our sales pitch and our funding models. Thank you.
With that, I think we're about time. We have 2 minutes and by one more question. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Lynn. Thank you so much. I do science communication here and I write about wildlife. I was wondering, with the Biodiversity Lab in particular, like what kinds of audiences are you having to communicate your data to for, or where does the most significant impact come from people knowing a particular something?
Yeah, thank you. So science communication is so important. Thanks for your service. For the Biodiversity Lab, so we do environmental consulting. So we'll tell you what to do. We do contracting, where we can do it for you, really by working with local companies around the world, and then events, both experiential and keynotes. So we're engaging people. For example, with the Best Bees Company, we work with very large banks. I think we're under NDA. But so one of them came to us and they said, we are not budget limited. We want to do everything that you can do. We want to do all the events. We want to do it at every single site. And so just overnight in one meeting, essentially, I mean, that was over a 6-figure annual contract. And for us, starting with nothing as a student, I was like, yes, amazing, great, let's do it. And so when we're thinking about the stakeholders, often it's corporate leaders. Often it's those who have to do with real estate. Very often it's those who have made public commitments and communications saying they're going to do more for nature. That's when we say at the Biodiversity Lab, like, I bet they don't know what that means. And we want to reach out to say, hey, thank you so much for committing to nature. You're amazing. For example, sportsfornature.org is a great organization. Check it out. They're out of Geneva. They're affiliated with the United Nations and the International Olympic Committee. All of their signatories, it's over 100 stadiums, leagues, teams, athletes around the world have signed on. And as a pledge, we're going to do more for nature. They don't know what to do. And so we reach out to them or other accreditation organizations. And I can list off dozens of them, but to spare you, there are many out there. And we say, hey, you're doing great. we'd love to have a meeting and learn about where you're at and to see if we can help. And so my process is to just find a stakeholder there. So again, usually it's if there's a sustainability person, a person quoted in the article, oftentimes it's in the real estate or sustainability divisions, and then listen to what their goals are, what their benchmarks are, if they have some, and then make a plan with them for baseline goals, and then for best practices to achieve the goals that they're trying to get to and reevaluate on an annual basis there, especially using technology.
Yeah. Can I ask also about the Urban Bee Lab? Because I know with all the eDNA, it's like fascinating, but does the larger public need to know, or like is it more aimed towards scientists or policymakers?
Yeah, so the Urban Bee Lab analyzes and reports data to the general public, and we'll do it in really creative ways. So we're trying to do more TEDx talks and TED Talks, book tours, articles. We have a wonderful board of directors that's all around the United States right now. We're hoping to go global. And people are trying to get creative about how we share the information. And so, for example, shout out to Liz at Mahoney's, looking at different garden centers where we can go to the public and say, hey, can we highlight this is a honey bundle? Because our data have shown where we share the data at urbanbeelab.org for free around the world from the honey DNA results. These are the pollinator plants. Can we next go to garden centers and say, hey, we have some data. Can we add some value? Do you want to highlight the honey DNA pollinator plants in some way to say, hey, your local honey shows that the bees like here. So buy this because we know that this is what they like. So is that a way not just to drive impact with the community, but also to help companies make some more money? And then also do engaging events that maybe the press can pick up. And so that's where Rekha comes in here too. And then maybe bringing in other brand partnerships so that we're going beyond just the press, but by adding in the data so that it's this whole new world moving past greenwashing, save the bees, to, whoa, look, this acoustic sensor just picked up this crazy species of bird, and now I got a text message that shows this is what it looks like, and we can hit a button to listen to it. So interactive ways that are hitting all levels of society, especially business.
Thank you, Noah. Thank you, everybody, for your engagement, thoughtful questions. It's been such a pleasure to be part of
you,
the
Audrey.
conversation.
Yeah.
Thank you for your inspiring story. Please join me again in thanking Noah.